albums and playlists in any order. No ad breaks. Just uninterrupted music listening without limits. Tap the banner to learn more.
Butter pop. Nobody here. Who am I talking to? Oh my god. Okay, I'll return.
Live from an Amy insured backyard, it's
Big Riley Powers. Look at the size of him. How far can he throw the discus? It's going into the kitchen window. Not the result he would have wanted.
when our athletes are in the making.
Lucky you're with Amy.
Before buying home building insurance issued by Amy, read the PDS and TMD at amy.com.au and consider whether it's right for you.
Alright, I am back. You hear Simeon? Okay. Well, I will resume working on things momentarily. And, yeah, no, I'll, speak with you whenever you're back with me. So I was just, taking a little bit of a walk. And, yeah, no, I was thinking, about a few things while I was gone. Mostly in terms of, like, my stream schedule and basically how I think I can best work things out. And I think treating this similar to D&D for me is going to be a good way of going about it. So I'm thinking maybe 2.5 to 3 hour sessions in actual world building, and then maybe about a solid 2.5 hour break as well. With that said, one of the things I am going to do is just fix up some of this overlay stuff real quick, because well, you guys can see it all pretty clearly, even as messy as it looks. I haven't fully looked at it all properly as of yet. Mostly in terms of like from the actual stream perspective. So I'll keep working on like cleaning things up a bit when I do take my breaks, and yeah, we'll see how that goes. Alright, in the meantime, let's kind of get back into things a little here. So we've kind of just been working a little bit on this mild concept for the kind of border region of the Knights and Wizards. We've kind of established a few things here. Namely, 1, we're going to have a town. 2, we are going to have a fortress. And 3, we are going to have a dungeon. But yeah, no, before we continue to like flesh out the individual aspects of all of these areas, just having an idea of how big this region is going to be, because that is what it is, a region. We're not just doing the school as a thing alone from everything else in the world. There's an entire ecosystem and environment around it, and we're kind of working with all the levels of like the ground up for how this small school we started with connects to the rest of society. And we've gone from a wizard school by itself to now being a wizard school located within these mountains and forests and lakes bordering an enemy nation, or question mark, allied nation now. And about the other academy on the other side of the border, now connecting on top of that with this town and this fortress, all rough located within this vicinity of these magnetic fields that are really the reason for why all of these are here to begin with, and the influence it's kind of had not only on the local flora and fauna, but also the minerals and the underground environment beneath. And it really is kind of a nice process, just taking your time to flesh all this out as we have been. With that said, in terms of the development of these sections here, I'm thinking we might start with the fortress itself. Mostly because I feel like that will be the one that would have to develop less in comparison to the others, because a town's going to have the entire political landscape on its own, with a lot more life and characters. And the dungeon is going to be a bit more specialized. So yeah, let's think about this little fortress here. And I am going to look to get my Spotify subscription after this stream, so I don't have to hear any more ads. Or maybe I can even quickly do it now. Let's see.
Not what others have. And BetterHelp makes it easier to start. It's online, flexible, and surprisingly affordable. Connect with a credentialed therapist by phone, video, or online chat. Tap now or visit betterhelp.com/Spotify Music to save 10% on your first month.
G'day, Paul Turner here from Woolworths. Improved growing conditions for strawberries means we're seeing beautiful quality and volume at the moment. Jazz apples are delicious after a great harvest, while washed white potatoes and brown onions are perfect veg for the colder months. Finally, Imperial mandarin season is coming to an end, but there's still plenty of juicy Afora mandarins coming through. That's this week's Fresh Market Update.
Okay. There we go. I just went ahead and got myself set up on premium quickly there, so no more ads. Anyway, where was I? So, developing this fortress. We're probably going to do a few general notes similar as to what we kind of have been doing. But we are also going to do a similar system of development, kind of like what we did with the two academies we were kind of working on briefly. So let me copy that little reference over, and that will be there when it loads. Cool. So, in general, I'm thinking this fortress will be located at the mountain peaks, potentially in a valley parting between two mountain ranges, as a large fortress which connects both mountain peaks. The climate will be a lot colder and windier, with significant snowfall. And let's see what else. And will serve as having significantly harsher and rougher terrain, which results in less local flora and fauna, but more monstrous creatures / races. So this kind of stems into a bit of what I was talking about earlier in terms of just having like the more ordinary flora and fauna, like beasts, maybe rabbits, fish, a standard kind of ecosystem down there that isn't really harmful as such. And we'll say like the humans in general have a done job of like controlling the environments that they do have like some kind of domain over, which has kind of sent the monsters to other nearby areas or regions, such as a lot of the monsters being like down in the depths of the tunnels beneath these academies and the kind of dungeon down there, or up on these mountain peaks. With that said, I imagine they still will pose threats. I'm kind of liking the idea of the students having a kind of expedition both within the dungeon beneath the school, as well as kind of within the mountain peaks at the top. And that does stem a little bit further away with some of the initial concepts we were talking about, because as we are kind of fleshing out these systems and thinking more about the world at large and coming up with these ideas, it is going to kind of change some of the things we had in mind from the get-go. And like the fonts of powers for the kind of magic school and where those are all located is a great example of how that's kind of going to work, because with the initial idea of that kind of school of fort was for there to be like these 4 locations of power that all the students kind of traverse to throughout the year. But if they're actually located on other continents or on the other side of the nation, then that's not going to be realistically possible for these guys to achieve. So I am kind of leaning more and more strongly towards having some form of maybe like 4 specialized schools that like each within their own nations, wherever the fuck else, essentially kind of use the same systems with different things, because at the end of the day, like having like complete control over magnetics is in and of itself like strong enough as a kind of class archetype for for people to actually want to go there and learn how to utilize the properties of that kind of stuff. And it also just gives a bit of reasoning or basis or whatever else you want to call it to have the same class with like these different specialties be limited to these other different sections of the world, and basically allowing you to still play with the same kind of class and of a different specialty in the different environments, which is kind of nice. So maybe instead of just like and that can kind of bring into question like how the different cultures would essentially teach the same systems in different locations, because for example, the School of Motion being located basically in a jungle, more primal, often seen as savage and inhospitable area. Maybe they don't have like large towers and arcane tomes and magical cities and everything else. Maybe it's a more so tribal culture, and they're more like tribal warriors who basically rely on this systematic usage of these abilities to kind of excel within the jungle. It's kind of giving me a good idea of how to flesh out that area now as well. So yeah, I mean, as we do kind of like continue developing all of these rough drafts, because essentially the entirety of this one giant project here is basically a rough draft of just like putting thought to pen to paper to get all the ideas out, so we can kind of systemize them, categorize them, and make them better. And then we do kind of flesh out the actual gameplay system along the way. Then once it's all kind of more developed, then we can like transfer all the rough ideas over to a more finished, pretty looking, finalized project, if that makes sense. Okay. So, aside from that, the fortress is a joint bastion occupied by both the knights and wizards who utilize it to protect the kingdom's eastern border from the threats within the mountain range, as well as on the opposing side of it. Now, apart from that, the fortress...
Hi boss, what we working on now?
Hey, welcome back. We've just gotten back into things. So, we are currently working on somewhat of a mountain fortress. So, basically the idea in concept is that the wizard school and the knight school, I'm not sure how much you kind of heard earlier, but since they're from opposing nations, they're pretty much going to be bordering each other on the border front between the nations. And there's also going to be a nearby town, dungeon, and fortress, which is kind of like jointly occupied and protected by the two separate nations.
Cool.
So the current thing we're doing is pretty much fleshing out the fortress, basically.
And this will be a joint knight wizard fortress?
Correct.
Go.
So, I'm imagining this will be like further up the mountain peaks. Oh, I didn't mean to do that. Further up the mountain peaks, and it'll be like somewhat of a valley at like the tops of the mountains, and they've kind of built this fortress between two mountain peaks that kind of stretch over the valley, basically. So now we've kind of got to flesh in these concepts for this part as well. And before I do that, I'm just going to expand on my initial template that I've kind of been copy-pasting from a bit more. Just because I kind of need to fix a couple of things up there. There we go. So I'm going to quickly butt on out back to the Knight School, or even the Mage one, just so I can copy some of that info over. But yeah, what were you up to yourself while I was taking that bit of a break there?
We just went to the gas station, got some energy drinks. I actually ended up just kind of sitting around watching YouTube for a little while.
Oh yeah. You didn't get Prime, I hope.
Recharging. We talked a little bit about the super game a bit.
Ah yeah, the one that you were kind
yours.
of talking about yesterday, or?
Yeah. I got a little more nuanced with it.
Nice. That sounds fun.
It's gonna be very one-shot oriented.
Yeah, no, I get you. Okay.
Yeah, I just hopped onto some Elden Ring. Figured I'd hop in here and chat with you.
Yeah, no, you're welcome to come by
All good things.
anytime. Yeah. Alright. I've got my little notes here ready to continue developing. So, let's hop back in.
Yeah, I will be right back. I'm gonna use the bathroom, but like it won't take half a second.
Take your time. Alrighty. So here we are back in this section here. So I'm just going to bring the stuff we just worked on with the knights back up in my background, just as a convenient reference to tab between, since it's all going to be pretty much relevant for what we're doing here. So yeah, the history of the fortress will include in times past, the knights and wizards banded together to hold off a foreign threat intent on utilizing the natural resources the area for themselves. Ever since then, the knights and wizards have made it paramount to maintain positive relations between their people, to protect and as a consequence share this precious resource, magnetized metal, together. In order to accomplish this, the nations constructed this joint fortress in tandem, and now use it as a base to keep tabs on foreign threats. On the opposing side of the mountain range, who wish to invade. The fortress likewise serves as a formidable outpost to help with the culling of local monsters in the area. Cool. I'm not really sure what's on with my net today. It's not just Discord, it's not just OBS that keeps disconnecting for me, Discord keeps disconnecting for me too.
That's weird.
Yeah, I mean, Australian internet, it is what it is. So, religion. The knights and wizards themselves have no national form of religion, while the theocracy / Holy Roman Empire are making moves to spread their religion within the domain of the knights. Let's see. The religion has thus far managed to stay away from the reclusive fortress. Alrighty. So I'm not going to need to expand on all of these sections per area, like power systems for this little fortress here, but that's fine. Joint political relations between the knights and wizards. It is rare for foreign diplomats to come to this border fortress in particular, mostly due to how remote the location is. The any foreign threats that tend to intrude on the area are generally small scouting parties of foreign rogues/assassins who are on covert missions to secure whatever magnetic resources they can by any means possible. And I'd say there's probably like some interesting things we can do there. Was saying maybe there is like some form of political trader within one of these nations who is supplying these foreigners with this precious, nationally protected resource.
Yeah, I think that works out.
But yeah, it's more of like an open-ended thing we can leave for others to play
Folks
with.
to fill in.
Social classes. So, social classes are denoted by military / noble / wizard rank. So it's an important distinction that there's a difference between like a noble rank and a military rank, but how I like to see it in this case, because of how we're basically utilizing the nobility system, rather than saying there's the house of the Duke or the house of the Baron, and that's like the max rank of individual within them, we're basically treating it as every house essentially having a Duke, and then the individual members under them are only up to like a certain rank, instead of having like 100 different houses. But because we're doing it like that, I kind of like the practicality of being able to utilize the noble ranks as a military rank. So I imagine these, I imagine outside of that, these organizations, both of these nations will probably have their own commoners and their own regular infantry and soldiers and whatever else. But since knights themselves are like seen as military commanders, they are going to be the ones in charge. And since it is a kingdom of knights, I don't imagine they'll really take kindly to someone who isn't a knight kind of usurping authority. So a knight being the lowest rank, we can have like the knight be the lowest rank of like imperial infantry, and any other in terms of like commanding, and then anything like below that or outside of that is just like the same rank, except for maybe like a smaller squadron commander or something, if that's even needed, because maybe the knights could just fill that role on their own. Okay. Let's see, what else? So military, this is going to be the first kind of expansion on this. So knights and wizards have both joint and separate military units / squadrons, as well as infantry from both nations that serve under them. Okay. The knights themselves are generally in charge of strategic level operations in terms of infantry management and battlefield directive, but the wizard squadrons serve to play more pivotal roles in tactical situations. I was just thinking, Simeon, I'd like your brain juices for a moment here. So know in D&D, when a player says, "Oh, I take my dagger and I stab him," and before they even really like rolled to actually hit or to do damage, the player will kind of say what they want to do, like, "Oh, I want to stab him in the eye," or "I want to go for his leg," or "I want to like decapitate him," or something like that.
Yeah.
I was just thinking in terms of the magic systems we're kind of using. So in this case, magnetism, for example, like the ways that could be used on a battlefield to do whatever. And basically, my thought process for that is if a player was to like attempt to attack someone with magnetism, they could like crumple in enemy armor in and on itself. So like they might crumple it with the leg or with the head or whatever. And
yeah.
Basically the thought process was whether or not there should be some kind of damage system that may make it so certain creatures such as humanoids may take more damage if they get hit in some areas other than others, but I guess that's more so for the dice themselves to kind of determine, because like even if you attack different locations on the body, like the foot or the head, with the head being an obviously much more noticeable weak spot, in terms of how the damage numbers work, like if you roll a 1, then you could basically just narrate the helmet saying, "Oh yeah, the helmet only mildly kind of squeezes the head. You see it's some blood coming out, but like no real sustainable damage." Or you can say, yeah, like the iron kind of feet, like literally kind of crush the foot completely,
Rushes
and the foot comes off.
Yeah.
Or something like that, yeah. So I guess I don't really need to think about that as a system. The other thing I was thinking of is, so you know how spells basically have like range or whatever?
Mm-hmm.
What I was thinking is, rather than just saying you're limited to like a range of 120 feet for firebolt or whatever, it's basically just going to be if the DM says your player can clearly see them, then your powers should be able to manifest and take effect, if that makes sense.
Ooh, yeah.
Because I want to try to get rid of a lot of like the min-max slash kind of unnecessary feeling gameplay as much as possible. So
For sure.
And one of the other kind of things I had in mind for that is also maybe movement on the battlefield. Because with movement, basically how it works in D&D is you get like 30 feet around on average, depending on your race or class or whatever. Which is all well and good, but even when you have movement, when you need to use it, it's either perfectly enough for you to get to where you need to be and do what you need to do, or it's not enough at all and you just result in not being able to do anything, and that's not really fun, if that makes sense.
Do anything,
And following up from that, this is leading somewhere, I promise. When you do have like 30 feet of movement, you're generally just moving to one other spot in that round and then staying there. You don't generally go say, "Oh, I'm going to go here, I'm going to do that, then I'm going to go there and do that." Although that does happen, it's a much rarer and nicher example, if that makes sense. So, what I'm thinking is kind of continuing along the thought of the vision aspect, where if you can like see something, like you can do what you need to do there. Is basically, you could say your player character on this battlefield can basically go to any point within the standard size of a battle map within any kind of given round.
Hard right now, I won't lie.
Damn, can you hear me now? Can you hear me now?
There you are.
Yeah, I honestly don't know why, but the net's been so bad today. But yeah, no, the thought and concept is with movement. If you can, basically within the standard size of any given battlefield, the idea is maybe, hey, you can move your character from point A to B, and basically say they kind of get there. But no, that is going to actually cause issues of like range classes and shit.
I see what you're doing though. You kind of don't want to have like movement be like a thing as much. I do understand. That one's a weird one.
Yeah. No, I'm thinking maybe what we could do instead of using like 5 feet grids, for example, is we could maybe have like quadrants of like a larger space, like a 30 feet kind of cubed area, and maybe you can kind of move wherever you want within that given quadrant. I don't know, because then bordering quadrants are going to be a whole fucking issue. But I don't know. I just feel like there's a better thing that can be done with movement than the
for sure
current system.
A real like sword fight, that's a lot of things a lot of like games and movies tend to get wrong, like especially with my favorite class of weapon, a greatsword. Greatswords are not slow. They're not even really that much heavier than a regular sword. Even like a full-blown 6-foot Zweihander isn't like a slow weapon, and in fact most of them are much faster than like your average sword because there's more centrifugal force around it. It's like not even really the weight, but the way you actively move the greatsword. There's like circular patterns you hit that just like are incredibly fast. And
just
like
with
even in just like a regular sword fight, you're constantly moving. You do an attack and then you move. Like a turn is 6 seconds in D&D. Most fights happen and are done within 5 seconds. Like in real life. So it's like, it's real weird to just say that that's what's happening and like put the time on that and like not give as much player agency when it comes to that whole thing, because like you're blocking the realism of it and not making it a fantasy fun, you know what I mean?
Yeah, I mean, that's another thing that can kind of come into question, like the amount of time any kind of given turn or round essentially takes, because yeah, I mean, we all know like how much happens with this 6-second time frame as all that chaos is happening. I think even just like removing the concept of time from combat could potentially help break some of that kind of immersion breaking.
Different actions take different amounts of time, but they might cost an action that's kind of silly, you know what I mean?
Yes, for sure.
It thing also is that lends itself to like samurai being able to do the unsheath the batosai jutsu correctly.
Yeah.
Where they flick their sword out of the sheath as fast as they can. That's like a huge ting.
For sure, but yeah, no, I guess just movement and like round/turn time is something we kind of keep in mind as we continue to kind of flesh out these the systems. But that's probably something that's going to come more into play when we do actual playtesting.
For sure.
In any case,
I foresee a lot more rando questions like that popping up actively trying to play it. You know what I mean? That's usually how just D&D in general works. You do an action, and then it's like, wait, can I do this?
Yeah, for sure.
Can I catapult this bag of caltrops?
Yes, but then that's the issue of like coming up with like how it's going to be determined, which is again why I want this more generalized system, just so you don't have to think about the actual questions or mechanics as much. Because rather than thinking about the range of the catapult, how much force you would need to like send it fucking flying or whatever, it's funner to just say that if there is a catapult there, then yes, you can catapult the caltrops, and whether or not anything happens, you can just kind of make up on the fucking spot.
For sure, you have them roll like a basic d20, and DM goes, I'm feeling nice. Yes, caltrops go everywhere, and one spikes into the dude's eye. Haha.
Yeah. In any case, let's think more about this military squadron. So I'm going to do
what are we working on now?
So we'll have a knight squadron, a wizard squadron, a joint squadron, and an infantry
Squadrons of nobles.
squadron.
This is the knight side, right?
This
or is
is
this the both?
This is both. So this is basically the fortress that's kind of like occupied by both of them, and they're kind of working together to maintain their border. So I'm kind of thinking a bit of the logistics of how these guys would operate their infantry on a joint level, essentially. So I'm imagining a knight squadron itself, since knights are both like commanders on the battlefields as well as like formidable warriors, I'd say they're mostly commanding rather than grouping together to like take down like a single great enemy or like a single great force or something. So I'm kind of thinking if we do have some form of knight squad,
I get you.
Be like one specialized, like special ops squadron or something.
The SEAL Team 6 of Knights.
Yes. One specialized knight squadron forms a detached unit for particular missions, most notably for dispatching an invasive force of destruction to breach/infiltrate enemy lines and wreak havoc on the back line of the opposing battlefield or whatever. So think of like
yeah, like artillery.
Yes, but rather than like shooting from behind, they're basically like charging in manually and like just cutting their way to the back to take out the more vulnerable sections.
That tracks. Bunch of knights.
Then a specific wizard squadron would be a group of wizards who join up to specialize in dealing with artillery, barrages, or for handling opposing flying infantry / monsters. So basically, we're thinking. So the catapult you mentioned earlier with caltrops. Imagine that, but imagine rather than catapults, you just have a line of wizards who have giant metal balls, which they literally just like magnetically lift and then fling as far and hard as they can, and just watching these like metal cannonballs blast their way through like the battlefield.
That's basically what Simeon wants to do with his spiked ball and chain.
Yeah. And then for the aerial aspect, if they come across like winged or flying creatures, for example, what they could do is just basically get a bunch of javelins, and rather than like shooting them out of a ballista, for example, they literally just like do the same thing, but fling them upwards to like skewer through these flying wings or whatever else. And I really love magnetism as a magic, especially with this joint venture between the wizards and the knights, because it basically means if a foreign force is to invade, they need to be like relatively well armored or whatever to like contest the formidable infantry of knights, but at the same time they need to not be armored, because otherwise the wizards will just crush their armor in and honor themselves.
Yeah.
Which is probably why they do such a good job.
Perfectly balance each other.
Yeah. Which is why it's fitting with how I position these nations, because I think this border fortress is most likely going to be situated at the top of this mountain, and on the other side of the mountain, just like how rain and shit works, it's going to be desert, so it's going to be like the desert nation of assassins, most likely. Alright, as for a joint squadron of wizards and knights, how do you think they would fight in this case?
Ooh, especially like magnetic wizards in particular. They would probably not have a lot of wizards per squad of night wizard joining. And we've already established that the knights would be using stuff like arrows and stuff, right? Or like bows and arrows?
I would say they'd be trained in the art, so it's more a situational when and where they would use them and why. So if they're like fighting an ogre,
I think this in particular, yeah, a lot of them would just pick up, the bows and stuff.
Yeah,
I
they'd have
with
a
the
few
wizard
guys in the
squads
front
in
line.
particular, though, they would have either like short bows or like small crossbows, so they could also just throw a couple of bolts in the air. So
Yeah,
wizard
see,
guy
I don't.
can, like, magic them.
Oh, yeah, sorry. I was gonna say, I don't think the wizards themselves would, like, use, crossbows or bows, because they'll literally just, like, fling them.
Yeah, they wouldn't be armed, really.
Yeah, no, that brings...
No, it would more be, the squad could kind of handle some and do the thing, and every now and then the wizard guy's kind of there to be, like, heavy artillery, defense, and like extra firepower, so like 3 dudes at once can throw up a cluster of crossbow bolts into the air, and that's like 12 crossbow bolts immediately in the air, and the wizard hits it with a magnet blast in the opposite direction and just shotgun blasts crossbow bolts everywhere.
Yeah, no, I dig that, because I'm thinking what they would actually do is I don't think the knights themselves would be using bows or crossbows. I think they would have some magical, engineered, specialized weapon, which basically complements or takes advantage of the wizard's magic. So maybe just like some kind of sliding mechanism that just like probably more similar to a crossbow, but rather than shooting like typical bolts, maybe you can just like shoot, like even just like ball bearings or like even smaller spikes. And
yeah, I was actually just thinking about that, like an advanced slingshot or something.
Yeah. Because I imagine wizards in a joint squadron with knights would probably play more of a supporting role, if that makes sense. So if the knights are like,
everybody.
Yeah, so basically if the knights are like...
I imagine they'd be able to like give them lightning powers and shit.
Maybe. I'm roughly thinking that like, if the knights themselves are kind of like about to get like hit, they can literally just be yoinked back by the wizards into a safe spot.
That's also a really good point. You could have a very interesting setup like that. You have wizards on a giant metal plate, like 5 of them making the giant metal plate into basically a hover ship, like a fucking UFO basically, and then they fly that joint around with a couple of other squads on them, drop it down real quick, let them get off, and fly back up and around. And like, that squad could be like a whole medevac thing where they pull soldiers that are hurt or like they can't even move themselves. Their like bones are broken or whatever. They just pull them onto the plate and zoom them back to med tents.
For sure.
Yeah, I can see that going really well. You can, with magnetism in particular, and like having like people be the source of it, you can create a lot of stuff going on.
Yeah, I think thinking in terms of a Knight Squadron / Wizard Squadron / Joint Squadron is probably the wrong train of thought to begin with, because it's more so thinking about the different roles they can do, like the Artillery Squadron / the Evac Squadron, etc.
Yeah, because I think especially given that the Knights and Wizards would have already kind of come to a consensus, I'm sure they'll have their own, like, small standing armies within their, like, Supermanners or whatever the fuck. But, like, at the same time, if there's, like, any kind of true conflict, I'm sure they also have a united standing army of both Knights and Wizards.
Sure. In that case, General Infantry, I'll just call General Infantry for now, because I think what might be worth doing is coming back to this joint aspect at a later stage, because I think more so focusing on specializing and devising some form of like specialized uses for the Wizards on their own and the Knights on their own separately. Is a better way to start first. Then when I've kind of fleshed out those, then I can think about, they do this, this, this. What can they do when they are put together, essentially? Alright.
Yeah.
Now, what else do we have in this section? So, culture I might leave for now. So, geography. So, high, rugged mountain peaks, few valleys, some snow-capped tips, cold, windy, and barren, with occasional snow. Rain is rarer / limited. Cool. That's more so the next part for climate. Okay. I'm just thinking a bit more about like that magnetic field we've kind of been talking about throughout this process, because ideally what I would like is to have the magnetic field more centrally located at the base of the mountain, kind of where the schools are located, and for the town and the fortress to kind of be out of range of the magnetic field. But how do magnetic fields work with mountains? Would it be stronger or weaker at the top of the mountain, for instance?
Oh, that's kind of dependent on a bit of what the mountain's made out of and kind of where it is in terms of like planet Earth. But in a imaginary scenario, especially if the mountain isn't made out of like highly conductive or non-conductive material, it like needs to be conductive. If it is conductive, then, and it's been there for a long enough time, and there's lots of metallic minerals in it, yeah, you would totally imagine the mountain kind of, I'm seeing almost like a half, think of like a crater, almost. But then like the tips of the end of the outside of the crater are going inward a little bit. They would start kind of being pulled to the center.
Okay.
Long exposure.
That is interesting. So basically, like, if there were metals like inside of this mountain, they'd be kind of like be drawn to the outside of it towards like where the magnetic field would be.
For sure. And then therefore moving all the rest of the rock around it and kind of pulling all of the peaks and points of the mountain
kind of
just about
shutting
every way to...
Yeah. That
Indeed.
That does sound like it could create some interesting environmental scenery that might not be seen elsewhere, because originally what I was kind of thinking is that the mountains themselves would be like away from the field, but it sounds like it'll be more interesting if it's within it.
Yeah.
So if we have like, say the mountain peaks are like heading straight north, like 90 degrees upwards, the peaks would instead like tilt them another 90 degrees towards the kind of night border, which which honestly makes it harder for them to scale from their own side in comparison to what the ones on the other side might do.
It's like barbed wire fence made out of the mountain.
That's interesting.
Oh, that could be like a whole thing that the knights have to like, whenever they go over there, they have to like, in order to show that they're being cool, they have special dress that's all like leather and stuff, and they'll even carry like wooden swords.
For sure.
A knight can't be without a sword.
Well, that's why there's going to be like
Japanese practice sword. Oh, go ahead.
That's why part of the idea with this magnetic field is kind of to produce magnetic materials or minerals, which is why this area is so valuable. So some of the metals are going to be more attracted to magnetic fields, some of them are going to be repelled by it, and there's going to be like a combination of the two which isn't affected at all. That's the idea.
Yeah, a good alloy.
Yeah. And that'll kind of like...
a galvanized alloy.
Yeah. And that'll create like...
Naturally galvanized. Yeah.
So that'll create like different sets that these knights can potentially use. Like they can have armor that isn't affected at all by magnetics if they're like general infantry fighting in the field. Or they can be like intended to be attracted specifically, so they can be evac if they fall, or whatever else.
Yeah. Because they gotta have a contingency against the wizards, but at the same time, especially with peace being had already.
Yeah.
They gotta work with the homies.
Well, the initial thought and concept was historically they did fight with each other, and it was these minerals that they were kind of fighting over because the wizards need them to make their wands, and the knights need them to not be fucked by the fucking wizards.
Yeah.
So they're like, you know what? How about we just work together? And that's kind of how that came to be.
Can we please have a samurai here that uses a bokken?
What is a bokken?
He just uses like a wooden sword. A
wooden
bokken
sword?
is
Yeah.
so they have the bamboo looking ones. That's the like uber practice sword.
Yes.
But there's like the solid looking. It looks like a katana, but it's made out of solid wood. That's a bokken.
Yeah.
He's
That
like
sounds pretty fun to me.
He came over as a figure trying to. Ooh, you could even say the knights hired his ass to help them figure out how to.
Well,
to fight against the magnet wizards, but then they became buddies, and that's how trade happened with the East, and they're also now buddies with the wizards too, and now everybody knows everybody's cool.
Yeah, I mean, I'm partially imagining the general kind of students training would be using wooden weapons anyway, in duels and shit, just so they don't unnecessarily kill each other, especially since they're hormonal as shit, and since they're using aura and they're 10 times stronger than a normal person. Oh, I've really got to think about how aura would be kind of utilized as a gameplay mechanic, because well, in theory it is going to make them faster / stronger. The issue with that becomes stats. So basically, if we have stats be separate from aura, then basically what's going to happen is, since we already have the system of basically saying dex equals X number of attacks per weapon and strength equals X number of dice roll per hit, how is aura basically gonna do the same thing as those stats? Or does obtaining aura or activating aura give you a +1/1 buff to those stats, which allows you to do those extra dice rolls and hits, and activating aura actually allows you to go over the maximum cap of, say, 3 or 5 hits or whatever.
Ooh. I would say you probably want to make that aura specific. That there's some that might be a dex boost aura, and then ones that is a strength boost aura, and even one that's a constitution. I don't know I don't think you had that as a thing, but you know what I mean.
Yeah, the equivalent.
Health boost. So
yeah.
One guy can, you have 4 people in the team. You have your wizard, you have the tank, you have the DPS, and then you have the I'm gonna chop that guy's head off.
Yeah,
dude.
the idea in mind is aura will have 3 phases. So at this stage, phase 1 is basically internal aura, that's circulating it internally, which makes you faster and stronger. And that'll be maybe the +1 to strength / dex. Then the secondary idea is for external aura. And basically that kind of aura will be maybe similar to wearing a suit of armor without having to wear a suit of armor, or it'll be a suit of armor on top of a suit of armor, which basically allows you to make 2 separate dice roll to reduce incoming damage taken, which honestly sounds kind of cool. And then the third one...
Have you ever read... Sorry, go ahead. Yeah, you did have the third one. I'm so sorry.
Yes, that's okay. The third one is basically aura projection, which is slashing it out and away from your body, which is basically just making ranged attacks, melee attacks as range. So basically Kale auto-attacking with her fucking toggle and league.
Yeah.
So if you could see someone, you can cut them.
Did you ever read a book series called... Did you ever read a book series called The Warrior's Heir?
No.
And then the other books were called like The Wizard's Heir and then The Dragon's Heir.
No, never heard of them.
Really good. It was kind of a little young adult thing.
I had a shelf
They
on
had
child.
a really interesting magic system. Oh, damn. I'm sorry, buddy. We're gonna change that. Regardless.
I mean, it was actually the
how they
opposite of
set it
sheltered,
up-
but yeah.
Oh, yeah. Oh, Lord. Well, yeah, I'm extra sorry, buddy.
Sorry. I'll
Shit,
stop
I know about that
interrupting.
one, too. No, it's all good.
Hey, I mean, it's all listed in the server. Go have a read. But yeah, continue.
Yeah, I'm bad about reading. I gotta read all of that. The group therapy, love and support. I need to get in there myself, frankly.
Oh, there are some juicy
regardless.
bombs. Yes, continue.
Hell yeah. No, yeah. What they did was it was actually a play on the War of the Roses, back
yes.
in old Europe,
Yes.
and what they ended up really doing was that there were like 4 people that ended up finding this dragon, and it was the last dragon ever. It was dying, and it talked to them and told them to eat its heart, and they would become gods amongst men, right? So they did, and each of them in turn gained a power. There were warriors, wizards, sorcerers, and enchanters. And each of them had a bit of the dragon heart actively attached to their own heart. So, like, through the generations, there was still a piece of dragon heart attached to their heart, but it, like, got smaller or bigger, really just changed throughout the generations. And they had this device where it was like a cone, basically, that they would look to use to look into your chest and see if you had a piece of dragon heart. And the wizards ended up enslaving all of the warrior class folks to basically make like a giant gladiatorial event to decide if it's the red roses or the white roses that are in charge this century or whatever the fuck. It was a very interesting system on how to make magic hereditary. And like every time you've talked about your magic systems, it makes me think about it because the warriors basically use aura. It wasn't necessarily magnetic based, and in fact, it kind of feels like a combination of a lot of your magics for the wizards. And then there's like the politics people in particular. A lot of them like are naturally beautiful and just can't help but low-key seduce everybody around them. And sorcerers are just like naturally evil motherfuckers that want to fuck everybody else up because that was their dude. But it's like,
Sounds about right.
It reminds me a lot of this.
No, I get it for sure. But no, I like the correlation, and I forget if you're around for this part, but basically I'm kind of leaning more so into separating the magic schools from each other, like physically now. So I think it kind of makes a lot of sense with the worldview at large. Since environment is such a major factor in magic, like by obtaining these resources and utilizing them appropriately or whatever, it wouldn't make sense for them to be able to get access to all these unique, different, rare environments all within the borders of one kind of nation, which is why I'm kind of leaning more so into saying that, for now at least, these magic students can only really use the magnetism branch at this school.
No, I genuinely appreciate that separation too, because on like a player level, that especially once we do get a bit more specific into where what is with everything else, you can kind of just be like, yeah, I'm this dude from here, and I learned this type of magic, and you know, you can just kind of pick your favorite magic type and go with it.
Yeah. So again, they'll still be multi-classing to an extent, but basically there's going to be some classes that kind of have to be the first one you choose just to in lore. in law reasons. I mean, theoretically, if you guys want to like fucking break the rules of players and just choose whichever combination of classes you want that's outside of the worldview, that's perfectly fine. People can do whatever the fuck they want.
For sure. But it's at that point you should also have enough of a, for sure. You should have at least an understanding of the mechanics to multi-class and create a background on that.
Yes.
Are doing like you guys start at level 2 and you do want a multi-class, you can kind of say like the samurai dude from before. He went to samurai school for a while and then decided, fuck it, I want to go learn how to be a magnet wizard, and is now at magnet wizard school with his wooden katana.
Exactly. So I think
it allows that to be there, but it like creates a background for you without you even having to think about it.
For sure. I think the logic is going to be, like, as I mentioned before, a maximum of 3 classes, with each class maybe going up to 3rd level each at this kind of stage. And yeah, so you could basically be a 1st level warrior at the or knight at the night school and have access to like the 1st level aura, then drop out, fuck off elsewhere, get another 6 levels in 2 other classes, and then like come back somehow and get the other 2 levels, or like literally just like find a way to develop them yourselves outside of the night school.
For sure. I'm sure there's books and stuff and wandering warriors. That's one of the better tales is, you know, poor farm kid finds wandering swordsman at bar and teach me how to sword fight, please. Fire.
Yeah, basically. But again, one of the big things is just going to be that martial classes aren't essentially classes, and like wizards and shit aren't necessarily classes as well. They're just power systems. So wizards can use like swords and shit. They can be in melee combat, like with the magnetic ones, for example. So like I'm imagining they could actually be the ones fully dressed up in metal armor, storming into the opposing battlefield. It's like this massive heavy armor infantry that just can't be knocked over.
How do you feel about wizards fist fighting?
I mean, fucking giant. I'm literally imagining giant mecha armor suits, like punching it out.
It's kind of like, even on a basic scale, if a magnet wizard had brass knuckles or like iron knuckles, because I don't think brass is magnetic metal knuckles, and he just like, you know, even stuck his hand out and then did magnetism to make it go past the opponent's head, you're fucking decimating kids. Like, no bones.
Bruh, I'm even just like...
Of course, giant mecha fucking wizards. Yeah, mecha wizards!
I'm imagining, like, a few more things on top of that. Like, they might not even be in the suits. They could be commanding the suits from afar, like a golem. And they could literally, like, be commanding the fucking, the little robots to, like, shoot their fists out like a fucking rocket punch. And even outside of that, like, I'm imagining... give me one quick sec here, because I got a really good train of thought.
No, go ahead.
I'm imagining, like, again, so I've mentioned the cross-class, multi-class thing before. What I would love is for there to be, like, unique synergies if you were to cross-class between certain classes. So in D&D, like, you get you multi-class in Warlock and Wizard, but you don't become, like, one new class. You're pretty much just, like... You may remain as you are using these 2 separate systems of magic as one person, but I would like to imagine, like, utilizing these different power systems rather than remaining 2 separate classes. You basically become one new class. So for the knight and a wizard example, they'd probably more so become a magic knight, and they'd be zooming around with aura covering them with like these massive suits of armor, and they're just propelling themselves and like destroying everything. Or conversely, like an alchemist combined with one of these magnetic wizards, you'd get like the standalone, like a wizard could theoretically move a suit of armor around by manually directing it. But an alchemist who can maybe create some form of life, like a homunculus, could basically bind that to the giant metal suit, and you'd basically create fucking Alphonse.
Yeah. And then you just have a little sentient man just running around doing shit.
Exactly. So that's why I don't really want class itself to be a thing, because if we identify these as classes, you kind of like, you try to adhere to an archetype a bit too much. It's similar to how, like, I've been referring to this magnetic class as wizard, since we've been thinking of them as wizard, we're imagining these wands and waving them around from behind, when in reality, yeah, they could be right there at the fucking front lines.
Just punching away with, you know, magnetic knuckles or giant balls on their fists, just fucking oosh, oosh, oosh. I could easily see, like, a full plate magic knight or wizard just, like, standing there away from an attack. Oh yeah. No, I enjoy that very well. This is silly ass comparison, but Tiny Tina's Wonderlands did something similar with their class naming structure, where if you were like one type of class and then you multi-classed into another type of class depending on what was your first class and stuff, you got like a mashed title of the two classes that was like in one way or another different depending on what like was your first class. So like in the case of, you would be like a magnet knight in particular in that case, but if you went like wizard knight, you could be like a, I don't know, a stalwart noble, you know what I mean? Something silly like that.
No, I get it for sure. Because I do love the idea of players being able to like just name what a combination of quote-unquote classes would essentially be, and coming up with something else. Again, like the Magic Knight example being the classic one. But I think that'll kind of be fleshed out a little bit more as we progress, because if we do take like a triple class structure into account, while it's easy enough to just like match one class with every other class, when you have to match one class with every other class and then with every other class on top of that, the naming becomes a lot more unconventional. Because sure, you could have Magic Knight Samurai. Would it be Magic Knight Samurai? Would it be Semonite? Like, what do you do with it? Because I have
I think, like you said, it would definitely be kind of up to the player/DM.
Yeah. I mean, in theoretical concept, like before I really started putting pen to paper for all of these ideas, the original thing I had in mind was starting as a level 0 adventurer, going on your first adventure, and then choosing your class from there, and it'd basically be like a sub-series of 5 other classes, either like a fighter, a caster, an archer, a healer, or a knifer. I never really thought of a good name for the rogue kind of score that fit in with the rest of the team. Yeah, the Schenker. William Schenker. Oh, definitely, for sure. But yeah, that was the kind of initial thought process, and from there, the idea would be to kind of like reach up and kind of branch out from there as you kind of like attain and acquire these new kinds of powers out there in the world. So you'd become like from a healer, you could like maybe want to class with a fighter, and then you become a paladin, or you could like stay down a pure, become a priest, but there's also like crusaders and inquisitors and all that other fancy shit you can kind of think of. And then when you take the magic systems into account on top of that, it just becomes a really massive convoluted mess. But
for sure,
yeah.
For sure, you could be be like a healer that goes into alchemy for poisons, and then knives into being able to stab your homies and heal them, and then stab your enemies and kill them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
That could be a whole thing.
I think for now, the best thing to do is, again, just to think of the levels and classes and whatnot as, and power systems even, separate from each other, because again, the purpose is you don't level up and then gain power. You gain power, and that kind of defines your level, and that's why I've kind of got the some of the title structures down pat for like level 3, 5, 7, 9, or 1, for example, being like adventurer, champion, hero, legend, myth, and it kind of represents like its own school of like how epic or experienced you really are. And ironically enough, having started building this world from these school systems has kind of had an adverse influence in a sense, most notably in the way that how the rest of the system is going to be built in comparison to this kind of class/year structure that these knights and whatnot are going through with this specialized education, mostly because they are the exception, not the norm. The norm is people are going to be out there adventuring, gaining access to these powers, and those powers are shaping their level. But since they aren't necessarily specialized in this one given field, it kind of makes more sense for each quote-unquote class to be a single level, and basically kind of rather than like dividing the levels between powers between levels or whatever. So that might not have made complete and total sense, but I kind of got a good idea in mind of what I'm talking about. But basically,
I think I get you.
Yeah, basically, as soon as we kind of like begin fleshing out power systems outside of the schooling system a bit more, it might end up reshaping how we design schools in their entirety. Because when you really think about it, because of how I'm designing this system for like for each level, basically be this massive, giant power spike, all within the one kind of level range. The 3 levels of kind of like knightliness that are attained relatively quickly is a very, very large and fast like power spike, for instance, because that's basically basically become the peak of knighthood within 3 years, based on how the system is kind of being developed, and that really does feel too fast to become the peak.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking
that's probably a good place to like you do the thing, and instead of treating it exactly like college, treat it more like high school for the night school and wizard schools, and specifically have it where they go and do the night school thing, and if they go all the way through it, then they'll go and get like adventuring passes and like a free ticket to whatever, so you can even like use
that's
that to
actually a good way of putting it, because that kind of leans more into what the original system I had in mind was, where you do your first adventure, and upon like completing your first adventure, you get access to like your key form of power, and that's kind of gonna shape where or how you go from there. So I'm now thinking that going to night school, rather than getting all 3 levels of aura, it basically just gets you the first level of aura throughout the 3 years. And
it teaches you how to get levels of aura by getting you the first one, and then giving you your adventuring pass, letting you go out and naturally gain your auras elsewhere in a positive and
Yes.
powerful environment.
For sure. Because, yeah, I really like there being a milestone that is achieved for getting these powers, especially with, like, how powerful they are. So, like, conquering, for instance, I want some kind of, like, mythological beast and whatnot, like Leviathan and Behemoth. And, basically, being able to take those down, depending on, like, whatever your level range is, whenever that system kind of gets fleshed out, either A, results in some kind of, like, powerful boon or reward from, like, from doing something with its corpse, maybe. Maybe if you eat Behemoth's heart, that gives you access to a unique power through that.
Yeah. See, when you were initially talking about the runic language, I thought it would be really, it's kind of a rip. Like, it's definitely directly from fucking Skyrim. But, like, you know, you walk up to rune that's actually powered by true power and everything. Because, like, sure, if you just look at the rune and write it, whatever. But if you actually truly understand the rune, because that's what they were doing in Skyrim in particular, where, like, whenever you used the Dragon Soul to understand the word, you were using their knowledge of that word of power to fully understand it. So you could do that kind of thing specifically with the runes, but that kind of concept can still apply in different ways, like you were saying with the Behemoth hearts. You can kind of specify, like, these guys need to eat giant hearts, and these guys need to eat dragon hearts, and these guys need to eat Leviathan hearts for their boon.
For sure.
You could even make it like a religious thing.
Yeah, or, again, alternatively, even if it does feel fast, I could basically have each class in and of itself be the equivalent of one level, and since they are specialized yet generalized, so the Knight's power being aura, the Magnetic Wizard's power being magnetic, each of those is basically the equivalent of one level, and rather than, like, limiting things to, like, maybe 3 classes with 3 levels, you can essentially have 9 classes with 9 levels, and then you could really do some crazy ass character building shit. So you could be a magnetic wizard with a knight's aura with the healing god's power, who is also an alchemist on top of being whatever else.
Yeah, because really at the end of the day, that's what, like, a lot of people want when they get into deeper level D&D, is just to be able to do a little bit of this and a little bit of that and a little bit of this.
Yeah, I mean, that's kind of also why I feel late level D&D isn't as popular, because you're basically just doing the same shit that you had been doing that entire time, just on a larger scale. Whereas rather than thinking about playing from the beginning to the end as a single class, your class isn't your identity, it isn't your personality, it's more so just like an archetype to conform to. So if you instead say, hey, yeah, you guys aren't classes, you are individual adventurers. Think like in RuneScape, how you are both the fighter and the magician and the ranger. And you can kind of just choose what you want to do, when or where. I honestly think this is probably going to be the strongest way to utilize this system potentially. Like, just have the, rather than like nerfing the power levels of everything, take it all to the extreme. Because
that's been my biggest complaint with any kind of balancing system in any game ever, is that they always nerf things, and I've never been a big fan of nerfing. Just like bring everything else to that same level. Like, I do understand balancing issues, but especially in cases like this, like a TTRPG,
it's your imagination.
Really balance.
Yeah,
exactly.
It's for fun. People should be able to do whatever the fuck they want to do. So why aren't we letting them? Yeah, I think the big issue is like all of the systems have just been designed with like all these rules and all these concepts and all these arbitrary restrictions, and it's just become the norm everywhere, and it's kind of stifled innovation and creativity and progress. And I say, fuck all of that. Let's go balls to the wall. I'm gonna slap them so hard. I'm gonna slap them so hard on that fucking surface that they're gonna crack wide open. In any case, yeah, no.
Exactly.
I think we are on the right road.
Do you know what a pinata is as an Australian?
Bruh. Everyone, I would hope everyone knows what a fucking pinata is. Did you hear my answer? I've been cutting out.
I am so sorry.
Yeah, no, I think I turned robot-y there because I'm hearing you cutting out a bit as well, and yeah, I think it's just an internet day for me. At the very least, OBS hasn't been cutting out as much this afternoon in comparison to this morning. But yes, I do know what a pinata is. What is your point on pinatas? I think you're cutting out for me again more still now too. Rip.
Or like, and oh no.
Yeah, my net's really spotty right now. Can I hear you?
Oh no. I can hear you pretty well. Can you hear me?
Okay. I think I can hear you now. You were cutting out for me for a while.
Word. Yeah. No. You were just talking about cracking them open. And
yes.
Oh no, I didn't buy enough. Fuck, I'm an idiot.
Not enough pinatas.
Nope, that was the pinata.
No, yeah. But no, I think we've kind of gotten to a good kind of concept for how these classes can and should work, because basically giving people the dominion over any one thing and just saying, yes, you could do anything with that you can imagine. This definitely feels like a more creative way to apply oneself effectively. And it kind of gives... it makes it easier for people to kind of like more custom build a character they want to the utmost ideal, if that makes sense.
For sure, which in turn allows for easier roleplay. Yeah, no, I'm that's a huge concept I'm working with my game. So
yeah,
I can really appreciate it.
Ooh, no, this brings me to another really good point. So, have I mentioned the elemental or elementalist system to you?
A little bit, but not a lot.
Yeah, so basically the idea is, like, the four base elemental types, like fire, water, wind, earth, whatever. And basically how you obtain those powers is you basically go on pilgrimages with or to like elemental fonts of power, and you kind of make a contract there with an elemental. So basically you go to like, similar to the wizard system, you go to like a volcano or a glacier, or whatever kind of area you feel may be elementally relevant. And basically with this system, if you take like, can invest 2 of your levels essentially into contracting with 2 different types of elemental, like with water and air, maybe that's how you make ice.
Yeah.
It's basically like a combination elemental system, so you can literally become the fucking avatar with 4 levels.
No,
so
I think that would be fucking dope.
Yeah, so depending on what like power system / classes you choose and in what order you take them, you can really get pretty crazy with like how powerful or how creative or how flexible you can get so soon. And it really makes it
4,000% appreciate that.
And it makes it a lot more difficult for people to like overlap with classes or to feel any kind of redundancy. Because one of the concerns I had with the like having these actual academies in schools like Knights and Wizards is that everyone's going to be playing the same thing. But if they only just start as the same thing and have so much more future room for growth and potential from there, it really does like liven up the world a lot more.
It's kind of like you can easily create like sibling style rivalries within parties for self-improvement. Or even like a straight Pokemon rival type shit, where one of the other party members is like the antithesis to one of the other party members, and they just do the exact opposite that the one guy does.
Yeah, and along the similar kind of train of thought with this. Ah, fuck! I kind of lost it just as I began speaking about it. To be honest, no, it's okay. It'll come back. It'll come back. But the idea is like I think Papa was like mentioning earlier, like how you'd have like a one person be like a higher level than the others, and that kind of creates an interesting dynamic there, saying like, oh yeah, this person's more powerful than all the others, and they kind of got to work together to take them down or whatnot. He's like, no, yes, I'm too powerful for you. But the idea more so is that even if you do like access these new powers, you aren't necessarily more powerful than anyone else, because power itself is going to come more from equipment and stats, and power systems are more so going to be creativity and flexibility, because even if you can both like manipulate metal and manipulate fire, you can only really do one or the other at any given time during any given round, depending on like how many actions you have or whatever. And the actual damage and whatnot's going to come from stats, and since stats are going to be separate from like the power class system, it really creates an interesting concept of like okay, so I this is going to like go into a completely different kind of side thing, but it will connect to this. So basically what that's going to do is as you kind of leave the night school together with like a 4-party of level 1 knights, and you go off on these adventures on your own, even if you're adventuring together, you aren't necessarily going to be leveling up at the same time, because you can complete quests, you can complete missions, you can take down like great enemies and achieve your own goals like as individuals all along the while. And basically with how those arcs are going to work is, while there might be potential for some kind of unique power source to be accessible to all of these adventurers within the same dungeon, that might not necessarily be a power system they want. So some of them will become level 2, some of them will say level 1, but they can still continue adventuring together without necessarily being more powerful than anyone else, because the powers, those are going to come more so from stats. And even if you don't take the same power systems or take power systems at the same time as others, if you are on the same adventure, you'll have like the same or even different opportunities for stat growth separate from that, which can still make you more powerful and keep up. So sure, the magnetic wizard who can manipulate fire is a magnetic wizard who can manipulate fire, but if you've like been focusing on your training and you kind of like performed a great feat that shows your strength can increase its modifier and make you arguably more of a threat in a one-on-one kind of battle situation.
Yeah, I can fucks with it.
Yeah, no, I think HP / Constitution is really going to be the biggest question mark, because with D&D, like, how it works is everyone gets like hit points every time they level up, and then it either becomes like in comparison to like a normal person, you're basically an immortal god. And while that does sound compelling in and of itself, the problem is basically everyone becomes like that. Even if you have like a tank that's meant to specialize in that kind of thing, generally other people are still like tanky enough to kind of withhold their own anyway.
For sure, for sure.
I had a lot more thoughts, but I've kind of lost them all in the midst of my proverbial word vomit.
Nah, no worries, no worries.
Yeah, no, I'm just having such a good time thinking about all this. But yeah, no, that fixes kind of a lot of hiccups I had with this design process to begin with. So I am kind of glad we had that giant nonsensical rambling discussion.
No, I feel it. But I do think I'm gonna hop out of here. I'm gonna go bug Roland and see if he wants to kill this boss before I go to bed.
No worries, I know it's pretty late for you guys.
Have yourself a great night, man.
You as well. I'll see you sometime soon, buddy.
For sure. Later.
Boy. Alrighty. With that said, where the fuck was I? So, we have been working on this little section here in terms of environment and natural resources. So I wanted to bring up my environmental reference from the Magic School, and this is basically going to be the ecosystem of the mountain peak. So that's more so going into like not need to worry about that stuff as much for now. Same with like flora and fauna, we'll kind of expand on that later. Even a lot of these smaller details, I think it'd be better off being left to a later point. I know I keep saying that as we kind of go across these different kind of areas and regions, but that's because, as you kind of seen with this process as we've kind of been working on it and through it rather, how it's all coming kind of into play is we're literally just talking about these ideas and what would be cool and fun, and we're building so much more up and around it that it feels like it would be kind of more wasteful spending too much time on these smaller individual details now, when they're very likely kind of going to continue to be changed as we progress. Prime example being, again, this was originally just a wizard school at first, and now we've got this whole other environment kind of around it. So we're just going to continue to put down the rough ideas in general, and then we'll kind of finish figuring stuff out from there. So let's head over to this town, and we're going to say this is a joint border town between the wizard and knight nations. And even now, calling them wizards and knights is probably a poor reflection on who or what they actually are. But in any case, this is the frontier town dedicated to the acquisition and processing of natural minerals. aka it's a mining slash blacksmithing slash engineering town. Cool. Being a border town, this town is ruled jointly by the wizards